it's Miss Kate here. Welcome to my porch clay studio. As I was cleaning out my classroom, I found a lot of clay projects that I knew the fourth and fifth graders had started but did not have time to finish. We started creating these clay flowers, and a lot of them were only half finished, but I could not bring myself to throw them away. So I had an idea that we could combine the partially finished projects to make complete flowers. And then next year we could add color and find places around the school to install them. So I will need some help putting these together. I also have some extra clay that I can give to you. And the materials to use would just be the clay, the bowl, and then a barbecue skewer to score and slip. Oh, and water. So I'm going to go through the steps on how to do that right now. But behind me here, those are all of the boxes of started projects. So I will need lots of help. I'll need at least 15 people to help out, probably more. So I'll go ahead and move down to my workspace so you can see what I've started. So as I was going through the boxes, I was looking for flowers that had some similar petals or similar leaves so that I could combine them. So I looked at this flower here. So here I have some small petals, and then on this one I have a leaf. So with my extra clay, I would pinch a little piece off, roll it in my hands, and then I would use my fingers to kind of pinch and stretch that clay out to match the petals that are on this flower that is already started. What I really like about wet clay is that you can just use, if you end up getting any little cracks, you can use a clean, dry finger to just kind of smooth that out. So then when you are attaching two pieces together, fourth, fifth, and sixth graders, you guys should all remember this, is you need to do a process which is called scoring and slipping. So when you score a piece of clay, you essentially scratch down into that clay in two directions. And you want to do that on both pieces that you're putting together. And then you want to add a little bit of water. You can do this with your fingertip, or you can take a little brush, dip it in the water, and then add just a little bit. And then you score again. So again, that's scratching in two different directions. And then you put the two scored sides together, and you want to add a little bit of pressure. So I'm kind of pushing and wiggling down here to make sure that that stays together. If any of my score marks are showing, I can just take my finger and slide it over that space. So I made a bunch of other little petals that I plan to stick on here. And then I want to take my leaf piece and I will add that to the middle. And then I will add some texture on the inside. So if I had a bunch of pieces already made and ready to go, I could score this entire outside area of the flower. And the backs of all my petals. And you can always go back and smooth things out. So if it looks a little bit sloppy right now, that's okay. Clay is very workable and very forgiving, which is part of why I like it so much. Pretty easy to fix any mistakes. So now that I have my areas that I want to attach to and scored, I'll add a little bit of water to make my slip, which is essentially just clay in its most liquid form. And then I will score again on all of the pieces that I plan to attach. All right, and then little push and wiggle. What scoring and slipping essentially does is create a locking system for that clay to stick together. If you don't score and slip your pieces as they dry, they're essentially trying to attach like this, and then as they dry, they will fall apart. So you want to make sure that you are incorporating that step every time you are putting two pieces together. One thing I like about using the flowers that were already started is that we'll get some variety in petal shape and size. So that'll be really fun once we get to put everything together and add color. We'll have a nice variety of shapes and sizes. So now I'm going to add this center area with the leaf. Again, I'm going to score and slip. And this leaf was already attached quite nicely, so that person followed directions very well. Actually, a lot of the flowers that I took out of the box and checked out, it looked like people did a nice job with those first attachments. Get a little bit of water. Add it on my two pieces, and then score again. Create those grooves. And again, don't be afraid to really get in there. You just don't want to press down so far that it would create a thin spot on the clay where it would crack. So I'll press my center down. Again, apply some pressure. Make sure that those pieces are sticking. And I'm taking a finger just to smooth out any score marks that I don't want to show. Now I should have been doing this on a piece of cloth because wet clay can stick to a tabletop. This is a piece of drywall, so that absorbs some of the water, but really a little piece of cloth would do just fine. So this person did a nice job carving in a little leaf pattern. I'm going to add a little bit of texture onto the center of the flower. I'm going to use the back of my barbecue skewer to do that. If you have other tools at home, you can try pressing those into the clay as well to see what kind of texture you can get. And again, this is a nice way to add some variety and visual interest to your work. I also have some clay stamps that I worked. Anything that has a raised and lowered surface, if you press it into wet clay, it will create an imprint. So if you have Legos or things like that at home that have an imprint, you can experiment with pressing those into the clay to get some variety in the types of marks that you make. Or even the back of a paintbrush if you want to get a variety in the sizes of indentations that you create. Okay, so that is one flower. So some important things to remember is anytime you are attaching two pieces of clay, you need to score going in two directions, add a little bit of water to create your slip, and then score again on both pieces that you plan to attach. Apply pressure when you are putting them together. When it comes to forming the clay, you can use your hands to create spheres by rolling those in the palms of your hands. You could even create coils, also known as cylinders if you're thinking about just a shape, to start out with your petal shape. Or you could create what's called a slab, which is essentially just a flat piece of clay, which is what these petals are right here. So I could start with a coil if I want to have thin petals, and then give it a little pinch to get it a little bit more flat. Then this would be a nice petal for something like a daisy. Or if you wanted to have kind of more wide, elaborate petals, you could start out with a larger piece of clay. I always like to start with a sphere, make sure my clay is nice and compressed. And then if I want it to have kind of an oblong shape, I can give it a uh, couple of rolls in my palm going the same way so that it elongates the clay a little bit. And I could either press this down on a piece of cloth or an absorbent surface to flatten it out. And I like to kind of keep my fingers in a spot where uh, I can help inform the shape. So if I'm pinching down here, but I'm kind of letting this free at the top, this will keep this shape here as I pinch and stretch that clay out. If your clay gets a little bit dry or you start to see cracks, again, just take a nice clean dry finger and smooth those over. If you've been working with a piece of clay for a long time, the clay itself might be getting stiff and it's not wanting to stretch. If you happen to get a lot of cracks, what I would recommend doing is taking just a tiny bit of water on your fingertip and smoothing it onto the surface. You don't want to overdo it with the water because then you'll just get a really wet, sticky surface, and then the clay is going to end up being more difficult to work with in the long run. So I hope that you are feeling inspired to create some flowers. Once your flowers are complete, I'll have you drop them back off to me. They can either be dry or wet. If you keep them wet, they'll be a little bit easier to transport because once clay gets very dry, it can break very easily. So if you decide to participate, again, you'll get a bowl. You'll have a piece that's already started. I'll give you some workable clay and a barbecue skewer. And I'll have this all in a plastic bag. And you want to keep the clay covered until you are ready to work with it. You want to have it completely sealed because if air is getting to the clay, it will dry out. And if your clay is dry to the point where it doesn't bend anymore, it's going to be too dry to attach. So make sure that your clay is what's called either leather hard or in the plastic stage where you can still move it. If it's beyond leather hard and it starts to change color to a lighter gray, that means it's too dry. The good thing about clay is it is part of our environment, so if you mess up, you could always toss it out in the backyard, or you can throw it away if you're not comfortable with that, but it's not going to hurt anything. Please let me know if you have any questions. If you want to participate, you can send me an email at mcgreek@cpsboe.k12.oh.us. And if you are interested, I'll let you know where you can pick up, or I'd be happy to drop clay projects off since I live in Pleasant Ridge. So I hope you guys are excited to participate, and I will talk with you soon. Bye.